whatever you do, you can find, even within the careers that people choose, like we think, I don't know, an accountant is one thing, but there are loads and loads of different types of accountant, there are loads of different types of accounting, and what you do within those roles can be completely different to the next as well.
Follow one course until success. It's something I'm not as good at, I think, where I spread myself too thinly.
A monk sees a snake that's burning in a fire in a burning bush, and he reaches in and grabs the snake. As he does so, the snake bites him repeatedly, and he takes the snake out. And the students that are with the monk say, why didn't you let go of the snake? It's been biting you. It's been biting you. And he says, well, that's the nature of the snake. The nature of the snake is to bite. That doesn't change my nature, which is to save the snake. Hello, Harry. Good to see you, buddy. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Nick. I see a new backdrop there on your screen.
It's not fake, but it brings a little ambience. It kind of highlights the lamps and the old kind of...
I thought you were in a...
jazz lounge thing I'm going for.
In a kind of cabin somewhere in the woods. I was like, oh, that's quite cool. I put my kind of icon or my symbol up in the background as well, actually. So this is not a virtual background behind me. This is actually a picture poster thing that I put up today. So how's it going?
It's good, busy as always, but I'm quite excited about today's conversation because I don't know where it's going to go. But I think you and I spoke briefly, and we're going to talk about the things we'd wish we'd known years ago. I know this was inspired by a conversation you've had, so I'll let you give the audience a bit of.
So actually, I went on a Mind Valley London meetup. So there's a group of people who are connected to Mind Valley. They've either been to the events, or most of them tend to be on the online programs, on the quests, or the online learnings. Anyway, a girl was there that I know through actually now 3 years of Mind Valley, maybe. I think I first met her maybe 3 years ago. She's only, I think, 23, just turned 23. Yeah. Anyway, as we were leaving, she was, kind of out of the blue, said, what advice would you give to me as a young person? And it wasn't actually anything I think I put in this blog post, which we're going to use as a starter for the conversation. But I think I just said to her, look, just explore, right? Use your 20s, use your youth to not get too caught up on work. I think you went pretty much straight into work and stuff, I guess, after
uni. I did. Right? I mean, I had a blinding time at university, very having the best time of my life, taking advantage of everything that university life has to offer. But straight into work to clear the debts after that, because I spent too much on partying and alcohol and all the things. I think you're supposed to do when you're 17 or 18 years old, right? And you're at uni.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I think for me, I spent a lot of my 20s and probably my 30s, and maybe even my 40s now, meandering and wandering through different things and not really thinking about... I always struggled with trying to find a career, as it was, right? I was always kind of jealous of these classmates of mine who at 14, 15 knew they wanted to be a doctor, or knew they wanted to be this, that, and the other. As far as my education went, or my aspirations was get to university, get a degree, and then go traveling. That was about it. And so I think there was all this pressure a lot of the time of getting a job, being in the career. And I don't ever felt like I ever got into a career, although I worked at various organizations. I even worked for the London Stock Exchange and Accenture, but I never felt any of that was a career. And I always felt like, I think there's a lot of pressure on people at that age, 20, 25, even 30, to know what they want to do. And so for my advice to her was, look, just relax, right? Your 20s, maybe even more beyond, your 30s are for exploration and not to take it all too seriously. And so I thought it would be a good idea so a couple of years ago, probably 2019, I wrote a blog post, and I wrote it with the intention of maybe passing it to my nieces when they're a little bit old enough to recognize this, to actually read and digest some of this. And this is really just simple advice that I would give to people. And some of them are very straightforward. Some of them maybe we need a bit more exploration with. And I wish I'd known this stuff and been encouraged to think about this stuff maybe 30 years ago.
Well, timing is interesting. So I've obviously got a 15-year-old daughter who's going through her options at the minute, and it's interesting. You mentioned there that people put pressure on thinking like you need to know what you want to do. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a leisure centre manager. Like I was set. I love sport. I like business. Put the two things together. What do you get? sports center manager. And that's not to discredit any of those people out there, that the Mr. Britishes that are up and down the UK that do a fine job. But when I was a kid, I didn't really know what opportunities were out there for me, so I kind of made my own assumption of that's what I wanted to do. And then later on, I decided I love being on the stage, so I want to be an actor. And I think the advice I'm giving to my daughter at the minute is like, you don't need, as you said, you don't need to know yet. Like, it's a journey. The whole cliche of it's a journey. Focus on the journey, not the destination. What is it you like doing? Follow your passion. If you love what you do, the idea that you never have to work a day in your life, right? And I said, if you find something you're really passionate about, the money will come. But even if it doesn't, it won't matter, because you'll just love what you do. So like, focus on that bit first. She's really passionate about travel. She's passionate about supporting charitable work and helping others and new experiences. She's brave. I mean, we jumped off Table Mountain when she was like 8 years old, and the paraglide, like those kind of things she's amazing at. And I was like, just follow wherever that takes you. If you want to travel and you want to write, that doesn't mean you have to be a travel writer, which is like the kind of the career path that the school will tell you need to do because you've ticked those 2 boxes. It can take you anywhere. Go and explore, and you'll find your natural place in the world.
Well, I mean, now you can definitely make a career traveling. When with Instagram, with YouTube, all of these people who are travel bloggers, or even talking about things to do with travel. I can't tell you how many videos I watched of people who are, one bag travelers reviewing the bags. I think we talked about last time, where they're getting paid to review bags or travel to different destinations. And actually, it's interesting you talk about that, because the first one, I have it in no particular order, and there's over 120 of these at last count, 132. So we won't go through all of them naturally. But the first one is follow your bliss, which is effectively, I guess, a Joseph Campbell phrase. And really, like you say, do what you love, because the reality is a lot of time you may not make it to the upper echelons of that career, or you may not earn the millions that you want from that career. So life is too short to be doing something that you don't like and still not making the money that you want.
Also,
and you're more likely to make the money that
doesn't
you
make
want.
you happy anyway. If you're unhappy with your job, you spend all your time trying to make money to pay for your happiness otherwise, to pay for the things that just get you out of the funk you're in at work. So it's a miss economy.
It's good to have it. I mean, here's one of my Kanye West quotes that I do like of his, where he says, like, having money isn't everything, but not having it is. So you do like need money, and you're going to get more of it if you do something that you enjoy, I imagine. And that's, I guess what I've been doing for a number of years. I would probably be earning more doing what I was doing before than I am now, probably, especially 15 years later. However, I'm enjoying what I do. Whereas I think if I'd done 15 more years of what I was doing before, I don't even know if I'd still be here, to be honest. Even though I didn't like it or loathe it, it was in between. I think I just was so confused as a teenager, and even in my 20s, as to what I wanted to do. When I came back from traveling, I thought traveling would help sort it out for me, and you'd find, I'd suddenly get this light bulb moment. And I came back, and honestly, I struggled. I mean, I think I was home for 6 months, and I went off again to Greece to go to a uni there. So it was a good couple of years after I got back before I even started getting into a proper job. And I just feel like a lot of people think that they should know what they want to do at 20 or 25 or even earlier. So I think the most important thing is do something that you're passionate about, and you're not going to necessarily know that until you try lots of different things, and they can be really varied and very, really unrelated. But there's still that connection to everything you've done. So even my physics degree, I use when I'm talking about health and well-being aspects, and how actually everything is connected, which is number 2. And all the little dots, as Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech at Stanford University in 2005, looking back is where you can join the dots, like him going to calligraphy class, for example, and getting the typeface on the Apple Macintosh right. So I think we don't appreciate that enough.
Well, it goes back to in 1 year, we often overpredict what we can achieve. In 10 years, we underpredict. And you look back and think, hey, God, 10 years ago, I never would have imagined I'd have done all the things that I've done. And yet we set these sometimes unrealistic expectations on ourselves in a 12-month period. I think also you raise a few things there. I use my daughter, I use me as an example of like, there's sometimes that pressure to conform, to have an answer. Like we need to have an answer. I would like just do what feels innately natural to you. If you feel like you want to go to university and that's what you want to do, then and you can afford to take that path, go and do that. If you want to do your apprenticeship, if you want to go traveling or whatever it is you want to do, I think there's always that voice inside that gives you a bit of an inkling of what that is. But I think a lot of people suppress it, certainly in different cultures as well, right? Because they feel like they need to conform, they need to live the life that someone else wants them to lead. But usually, more often than not, that just leads to unhappiness and discontentment. And I find, look, I work in recruitment. I have a recruitment business. So if I think about what I wanted to do when I was younger, that's not something that ever would have come into my thinking. That's something I wanted to do. When you actually break down what that is, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur or a business person. Right back to the leisure centre manager. I didn't want to be someone that worked in sport doing something else. I wanted to manage the whole thing. I wanted to have access to the P&L and the finance and the control. So there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit that I've kind of ticked that box for. I then wanted to be an actor. Well, I work in recruitment, which is all about people and interviewing and those kind of things. But also I've launched what is now 3 different podcast shows. So you kind of find your natural presenter or actor within you, or performer, is probably the word I'm looking for, even within the profession that I'm in. And I think that whatever you do, you can find, even within the careers that people choose, like we think, I don't know, an accountant is one thing, but there are loads and loads of different types of accountant. There are loads of different types of accounting. And what you do within those roles can be completely different to the next as well. I think it's the onus is on us just to follow where the music takes us.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And back yourself to succeed when you're in there. I've always, irrespective of the degree that I got in theatre, never ever put me off becoming successful in business, because I always back myself to succeed. And I think we don't do that.
A couple of things that you mentioned there, which I think jump out at me, where I've written them down in this blog post, going back to earlier where I've written here, question everything. And it's the idea behind that is not to just take things on face value of, okay, well, the thing is to go to university, or the thing is to get this job, or the thing is to, I don't know, eat 5 veg a day, right? Question everything. And I remember when I was at school, once a teacher, almost like telling you off for questioning things, because as a real young child, you're always asking why, and then at some point you're told effectively to shut up, and then you stop asking why, you stop asking questions, and you start just towing the line. And I think the last few years has taught me that more than anything. I'm someone that always questions things, and whilst everyone was following whatever was thrown out at them in the last 4 or 5 years, I wasn't doing that. Right, I was questioning, well, why this? Right, that doesn't make sense. There's no scientific basis behind this. If you think about it rationally, this doesn't work at all, right? And so question things. It doesn't mean be difficult and be obstinate, right? Because some people are going to disagree with you, and you're going to disagree with them. But it's question everything. That would be that's number 9 on the list. But the other thing that I wanted to jump on there was number 12, which is don't get caught up in dogma. And by that I mean, there's dogmatic approaches. We've talked about food a few times on this podcast, right? There's a dogmatic approach. If you're vegan, you've got the dogma around being a vegan, or being a paleo, or being this, or this is what everyone else is doing, and therefore I should be doing that. And I think somewhere down on the list is like, see what everyone else is doing and do the opposite, because it doesn't always hold true. None of these things that we're talking about always hold true. But I think the important thing is not to get caught up in dogma. And someone was asking me yesterday about my eating, and they were like, because obviously I don't eat certain things, but I said, look, I'm not wedded to that. Like, so I may turn around tomorrow and start eating meat, right? I haven't said I'm never going to eat it again, because I don't want to have a dogmatic view about something. Now, I have had that in the past, but obviously with age comes hopefully wisdom. And so now I'm trying to be a little bit less dogmatic about certain things, whether it's religion, whether it's spirituality, whether it's yoga, whether it's whatever. So that would be another thing to think about.
I think you talked about questioning things like I'd say question the assumptions as well. I think one of the things I learned quite early on, and actually still one of my close friends now, when I was at school, someone who I thought was a friend, I realised quite quickly, and I'd like to think I was quite intuitive, but I obviously didn't notice it soon enough because I didn't notice it till after I'd already made friends with this guy. But I realised that this individual made himself feel better by bringing other people down. And I think I recognised quite early that was quite a toxic trait. And actually, it's amazing how many people do that they bring other people down in order to make themselves feel better. And I think that the best way to overcome that actually is to bring yourself up, right? Rather than bring other people down, bring yourself up and look at yourself. But here's why I bring it into the assumption pieces. And this has taken a fair bit of time, not because I'm, you'd say I'm always really confident, but I think hopefully this will relate to other people that are going through it. When you bring yourself up, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good enough. And I think a lot of people will say they don't feel good enough and therefore try and pick themselves up. But when they do that, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, all you're really doing is reinforcing the belief that you don't feel good enough, that you're not good enough. So when you tell yourself that you need to be better, you're kind of reinforcing it. So I think the question that I've had, and I've really enjoyed the journey since changing that thought pattern, is if I'm not feeling good at something, rather than bringing myself up by reading text, whatever, I'll just try and ask myself, why? What can I do? Why don't I feel good enough rather than I am just not? There's a subtle nuanced difference in the way that we do things. But the ability to identify where I can improve in order to be better at something I want to achieve has made a big difference for me. As you know, I'm kind of addicted to learning. I'm always doing courses. I'm always doing different things. But it's not because I don't feel good enough. It's just because I have a passion for learning and a passion for knowing more and hopefully bringing those up around me with the knowledge that you end up acquiring. But I don't think we question the assumption enough. I think often we end up telling ourselves untruths and then we solidify them by doing certain things that reinforce it.
I think I want to just jump in and challenge you a little bit on one thing that you said there, because I'm very big on language, as you know, and where you said, why don't I feel good enough, or why, you're asking that question, why? I always think that's a dicey question to ask, because I always use the analogy of our brains being a bit like Google. So especially if you're someone who is gonna have maybe low self-esteem or whatever it might be, you say, oh, why am I not good at this anymore? Like, why am I not good enough at this? Or why am I struggling with this? And then your brain will turn around and say, well, because you're rubbish, or because you've always failed at this, or because X, Y, Z. I always think a better question might be something like, okay, what do I need to do in order for me to get better at this? Or how can I improve at this and enjoy the process whilst doing it, which puts in that idea that you're going to enjoy the process and find a solution. Or what is it I'm missing from this particular piece of the puzzle? Or what would have to happen for this in order to this not be true? Like those kind of questions. Because why, I think, leads
I know where
you're
going. It's interesting because the word why, we're going to go off a little bit off tact here. The word why is an inherently negative question to ask. So when you're typically, so in the world of recruitment or sales, it's the one open question you don't tend to ask, because if you ask a why to a client, it typically gets their back up, right? It's inherently aggressive as a question. But I think I use
why.
There you go, right? So everything you've just said resonates if I was in a slightly different context, but it doesn't in the way that I'd like to use it. And I'll tell you the reason why. There you go, using it again. Well, that's quite limited one. Is because usually when it comes to issues of self, certainly in my instance, I can't speak for others, I want to get to the source and I want to be able to let that go. I feel like the stuff you've said is kind of a softer way of circumnavigating what's really causing the issue that may or may not be holding us back. And feeling good enough isn't something you become, it's something you realize. So what do I need to do? I would say is saying you need to go and do something without actually addressing the why that's underneath it. So we're going back to what we would have done when we were younger, not necessarily where we are now. And I think there are actions and things I took because I didn't address the why aggressively enough, and I didn't let it go until later. So it took me a longer period of time to realize in myself that I was good enough in the certain areas that perhaps I held anxieties or held insecurities, because we all hold those when we're young, right? There are certain things we look at and we think, I didn't ask myself aggressively or as directly as I think I would have done. So I can only talk from my own instance, but I think for me, looking back, had I taken a more assertive route than the ones I did take, which was a little bit more circumnavigational in the way that you've described, and it's probably the route I did take in the moment, I think I'd have progressed a little bit quicker in terms of who I've now become. Saying that, I absolutely have no regret. I have no regrets either. So I think we are.
I mean, it's
exactly where we're meant
interesting.
to be.
There is a management technique, isn't there, called the 5 whys, which is
There is the 5 whys. I think I've done it with you before. You ask it, then you ask the why again. It's a great way of getting to the bottom.
Exactly, so I appreciate that, because let's say the photocopier, you don't get your copies from someone. You say, well, why haven't got the copies? Well, the photocopier, it doesn't working. Why isn't it working? Well, there's no toner. Or why didn't someone fix it? Well, because the person that fixed it is off sick. Okay, so why do we not have someone backup? So then you realize the root problem is you need a backup person who can change the toner. So I get that. The challenge is that most people are not going to go through 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 whys when they get to that thing. They'll be like, okay, why am I staying in on? Why have I not been invited out to any parties this week? Okay, well, because you're not friendly, or because you've got no friends. And a better question in my mind might be, right, what do I need to do in order? And again, it doesn't have to be do, right? But what can I change in order to be invited to more parties? Well, maybe I actually need to host the party, right? Instead of that, or how can I spend more time with friends? Okay, well, instead of waiting for friends to call me, I'll organize a night out. So this is why I say, effectively, it's just like Google. So whatever question you put in, you're going to get an answer back. So if you want a why question in to get an answer, but you don't, I just feel like most of the time that's probably not a productive way for most people on that.
It's interesting because I definitely disagree with you on that. Well, it's good we're disagreeing on some of these things, but I guess we can only talk about how we would change ourselves growing up. That's what the question is. What we change about the way that we do things. I think I was a little bit too soft in some ways, and I probably took decisions.
It's not about changing the things you do growing up. It's more about what I wish I'd known, or what I'd wish.
It's for me that again, they're relatively one and the same in the way that we're discussing it now. I think I took certain decisions that were to circumnavigate what I was actually anxious about, because I wasn't willing to let go of what was, or address the real elephant in the room, and you'd find ways around. But what happens is, the elephant stays there, it comes back and it just gets bigger. And I think if you address those things earlier on, then you can release them a little bit sooner. One of the biggest things growing up is conformity. And I don't just mean conformity to career choices. It's conformity to, especially now in the world of social media, to wear the clothes that other people are wearing, to stay on trend, to speak the same language, to have the same apps or whatever it is. And if you're not in those things, you feel like you're outside of that. And I think there's so much pressure on children now to conform to a standard that's been set. Really, I don't know. I think sometimes it's dangerous. And I think sometimes it can be helpful to sit back and go, I'm actually, because people don't realize they're unhappy till it's too late. They suddenly sit back and go, I was just really unhappy. Why is that? And the why in that moment, as you say, the 5 whys is an interesting really method to take in that moment. It's not because that person's invited to the party today. These things have gone on a lot deeper for a lot longer. We just haven't seen it. We haven't noticed what's in front of us. And then when we get to the root of the problem, you'll realize it's probably because you're conforming to a standard or a group of friends that actually don't resonate with your true values. They're not potentially not the right people for you. And you've got to make slightly bigger decisions and bigger choices to find your route to happiness, rather than keep trying to get that square peg in that round hole.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think also, one of the ones that I wanted to ask you about, because I read this yesterday and I thought, what did I mean by this? And then I worked it out, and I think that you might resonate with it, especially because you deal with a lot of candidates in your role as a recruitment professional. But it's like number 10: the separation is in the preparation, and I think it's also relevant for you because of what you're going to be going and doing next week, where you're going to Greece to do that talk. What do you understand by that? The separation is in the preparation. Now, this is like alliteration and rhyming words, which we speakers like to use.
The separation is in the preparation. I'm not quite sure what you mean by the separation.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, when it comes to, differentiating yourself from a good music artist to an excellent music artist, right? So someone like Michael Jackson, for example, arguably regardless of all the other things that have surfaced since, arguably one of the most professional in terms of performers out there, who was notorious for preparing, working so hard to get the moves right, get the environment right, get the show right. And that separated him from the rest, right? It separated him from all the other aspects. A candidate in your HR or recruitment or payroll recruitment, preparing for that interview, preparing around knowing the company inside and out that they're going for, is going to separate themselves from the other candidates that are also going and
I find this really interesting. I'm going to jump in because I work in a lot of recruitment, and I can totally now I can absolutely see why it's on your list. I don't think it should be on a generic list, though. I would challenge that, because separation and preparation from my side links to the human attributes, of which we all have different attributes. Some have patience, some have preparedness, some have spontaneity, some have tenacity, some have persistence. Now, for you would value preparation in that moment, and you would see that as an absolute strength. But I think sometimes these things, not necessarily diametrically opposed, but they're certainly often opposites. And I would say that sometimes when you're really focused on, in your case, that preparation to the interview, which could absolutely reap dividends, but it could stifle spontaneity, as an example. So one of the modern interview questions I might ask people now, because of this, people are getting over prepared. As an example, I might say to you, right, Harry, I'm going to get you to come in to the interview, and I want you to give me a presentation on this pen I'm holding up. Yep. So you've got a week to prepare. Do everything you can and come in. When you come into that interview, you've done all your work. I might go, actually, Harry, now you're here, I've just seen a presentation on that. Instead of the pen, can you do it on a calculator?
Yeah. But you would still be able to do that. Now, the reason I say that is...
What I'm saying, I'll let you come in, but I think knowing your attributes is a stronger way of understanding self when you're younger than just... I'm not saying preparation isn't a good thing to have. Of course it is, in the right context, the right moment. But I wouldn't have it down as something that is important for everyone. It just may be important for you.
No, well, I mean, I disagree with your point on the calculator versus the pen. For example, when we do Toastmasters, which I think you're familiar with, that speaking group that is all around the world, one of the things is table topics. Now, table topics is this impromptu speaking. So you get a different question, you don't know what the question is coming. However, the preparation is, like, if I went in and was asked a random question now, I haven't done it for a while, but I'll be very comfortable answering any question that someone throws at me, because I've done the preparation in the thousands of questions before me. If I'd prepared for talking about a pen and someone throws a different object at me, you would still be able to do it, because you've had that preparation in that way of delivering a presentation on an inanimate object, for example. So this is what I mean, because, for example, you're preparing for your speech next week, right? And if you do enough preparation, you can still be spontaneous. This reminds me of Bruce Lee. I think it was Bruce Lee, but where you have to learn in martial arts, your katas, you learn your rope moves over and over and over and over and over again. That's not going to be useful necessarily in a fight, but by having that, you're then able to undo that and be able to be more spontaneous with it, is what he was talking about. And that's what I believe as well. So, for example, I will prepare when I deliver my presentations. I have my lesson plans, I've done all these things, but it's not about being rigid. So I think this might be one of the other things, is like, have a framework, but have flexibility within the framework, because it is the preparation that makes most people feel comfortable. Because if you just went in with nothing, you're going to be struggling, I think. So that's what I mean, is that those people that prepare a lot, like even when it comes to like yoga teaching, for example, I remember one of my friends, and she was saying how, being with a high-level yoga teacher she was touring with, she noticed how much he was doing in the lesson plans for teaching, and how her game was upped when she did the same thing. It doesn't mean you follow the plan. I'm going to quote Dwight Eisenhower here, when he was asked about the plans that went into the Normandy D-Day invasions, and he asked, how good the plans were, and he said, well, the plans were useless, but the planning was indispensable. The act of planning itself, it's just like when people create a business plan. They can have a business plan. I can't remember the exact stat. I remember hearing it years ago, but they're company owners, some with business plans, some without. Even if those company owners didn't look at that business plan after writing it and left it in a drawer and never looked at it, they tended to be more successful than those that didn't have a plan at all. So it's not about following the plan. It's about that preparation of the plan. If that
I
makes
don't
sense.
disagree that preparation isn't a good trait. I just think I wouldn't have it as one of the things I would shift. I think that I'm a big believer in that. I think too much preparation or preparedness can actually cause you to procrastinate. It can cause people to freeze. It's people focus too much on the how rather than the who. I've talked about that a lot, and I think if you so many people, there's a saying, people say you over prepare. People can over prepare. It can get into your psyche where it prevents action from taking place because you've got yourself into that state. So I think, I'm not saying preparation isn't necessarily a good trait. I imagine it is in nearly every instance. I'm sure we could, if we really brainstorm, we could think of somewhere it goes the other way as well. For me, though, it would not make my top 10 list here of things that I would change in the way that I would do things.
Again, this is not me saying these are not things to change. These are things I think
would tell a younger
useful
you
to know.
Yeah, I think that it's not something that would come in my list of things I would tell myself if I was reliving my life as a young kid.
That's all right. What ones jump out at you? Have you got it in front of you? Because I'm curious to know.
I haven't seen your blog, to be honest. That's why you said.
Let me send it.
Have you got to send them on the phone? I can get it back up. But that's all right. We can just chat through. If you've got over 100, mate, we're never going to get through them. You can just.
No, we're not going to get through them. I'm just going to.
We'll chat them through. Let's keep it spontaneous.
Okay. So what else have I said? Learn to dance. Yeah. What you focus on comes to pass.
I like this. I would challenge the learn to dance, but I could have dance on there, but this is where I'd challenge it. So again, I would say, I'm not meaning to be contrarian, by the way. We're obviously different, and I think it speaks a little bit to who we both are, because you are much more prepared and conscientious in the way that you do things perhaps than I am. I think it's interesting. Dancing should absolutely be on everyone's list, right? Don't be afraid to dance is probably what I would have on there. I don't think you need to learn to dance. I don't think that's relevant, but we shouldn't be afraid to dance. It's such an inherent thing within us where I don't think I've ever come across someone where it doesn't give you joy if you're able to do it with a free mind, without the concern how people might be judging you for it. But I don't think you need to learn to dance. I think you need to be prepared to dance or unafraid to dance in any given moment, because it gives so much joy.
But that's not the way for most people. If they know, for example, I was at that wedding last weekend and they were doing some various Greek dancing, and honestly I didn't know the steps. Now a couple of times I went out where it was like a really easy four step kind of routine, but if I knew, and the same when I was in Colombia or where in Tallinn, I went and I did some like bachata with people, and it's a lot more awkward when you don't know what you're doing. I'm not saying. I just think there's three things on there. I think it was like learn to dance. Also, there's got learn languages, learn musical instruments, which are good for the brain. All those three things are good for the brain. Yes, you could say be prepared to dance, but I think for most people,
dancing brings joy. To have it on there and to think you have to learn to do it, for me, goes against what dancing's really about. I think the biggest thing that stops us from dancing is that concern of what other people might think. As you said, you might feel awkward. It's interesting because for you, you've linked it to preparedness. By learning, you're preparing to be able to dance in a given situation. For me, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I dance. I'm a terrible dancer. My wife will confirm this fact. I do not look good on the dance floor to those with a trained eye. And I couldn't give two monkeys. When I'm dancing, I'm thoroughly into the music. I love my music. I do play musical instruments. I play the drums. I love my rhythm. And, I was dancing in Turkey a recent holiday with Leo. Everyone was having their dinner. There was no one else dancing out there. And no one was too fearful of getting up. Leo went and danced on his own, bless him. And I went and joined him. And I didn't really care less. I just had a really, really good time. I'm sure the steps are out of sync. I'm sure they look pretty bad. But I think the inherent joy from dancing comes from the act, not from the learning the discipline. That's not to say you can't get joy from learning it as well, but I think be prepared to dance, or just dance.
I would say a lot of joy from dancing comes with dancing with other people. And one of the things I noticed in, say, South American countries where I've been to, they're all kind of dancing cultures, but they dance with people. It's very unusual for them to think like we in the UK we get the music and they're dancing by myself. And in that case, as long as you move your body, you've got rhythm, whatever,
dance.
It doesn't matter. But if there's
dance,
like a salsa going on, or a tango, or a bachata, or a zouk, or all of these kind of dances, and you don't know what you're doing, it's a lot more awkward. So, and that's how they dance, right? And actually, it's a great creates good connections and everything else. So I think that's where I go. And also, I'm also thinking, if I was a younger self now, from a dating perspective, if you know how to dance, you know how to sing or play a musical instrument, you
So that's
do
a
quite
different
well, I
thing.
think.
And maybe we got to check what it is we're talking through today then, because if it's something I wish I'd learned or could have just done and spent more time. Like I gave up the violin at grade 1. I definitely I love my music now. I didn't see I appreciate how much I'd regret that later on, in the sense that I would have potentially could have had all my grades and been a really good violinist. And I learned to appreciate music much later than when I was learning at 9, 10 years old, where I hated lessons and I hated the rehearsal. So things I would go back and learn and change from that perspective. But I was probably thinking we were talking today about more profound things about we may have changed about ourselves, rather than the hobbies or kind of
No, this is
things
just
that we're
other
talking about.
information. For example, one of the other things is we live in a relative universe. So again, that might not make sense to a lot of people, but everything is, from a simple perspective, everything is relative to something else, right? So something is only dark relative to something that's light. Someone is tall relative to someone that's short. So that's what I mean by, say, we live in a relative universe. Or here's another one: you need a dark sky to see the stars. Where it's just, again, just to get you thinking, well, actually, there are going to be dark times, right? If the sky was always light, we wouldn't see the stars, right? If it was always bright in the daytime, we don't see the stars. So actually, it's about recognizing that in those dark times, you're going to see the light. You're going to see, the glimmers within that, and actually not to be too caught up in everything having to be great all the time. So it's kind of like ideas like that.
I'll tell you something that if you're going, philosophical on you, I think the thing I'd have told a younger me, and hopefully this will resonate with others, and we've talked about on the show, is we live an infinite game, not a finite game. That the things we think are bad news in the moment could turn out to be the greatest thing that ever happened to us later on. And sometimes we live in the, and we should be in the moment, we should be present, but we judge the things that happen to us too quickly. We make too many assumptions, going back to questioning the assumption thing again, that what's just happened is absolutely going to have an only a negative impact on our lives, when actually even in the most negative of situations you can find positives. And I think knowing is we're in an infinite game of life, which means that I don't know whether this podcast we're recording today is going to turn out as a good thing, a bad thing, an indifferent thing. Who knows? Maybe someone will stumble across it in 5 years from now and it will change my life. I've got no idea, but I like the idea that the actions we take could have, I don't know how they're going to play out in the moment. I like the idea of the infinite game, which isn't mine. I can't think who wrote the infinite game now, but it's a really interesting concept for those who haven't come across it. And that's a little bit linked to what you're saying with the dark skies.
Yeah, I think it links
like
in as well with number 125 actually on the list, which is think about what today's decisions mean for the you of tomorrow, 5, 10, 50 years time version of you. That's something I think about a lot of the time. Is that decision playing?
Something I've been guilty of, linking to your languages and your, what was the 3 things you had? Instrument, languages, and dancing.
Yeah.
So of those, I've learned several instruments. I played drums most comprehensively, played for 20 years, did my grades and other things. I dance. I haven't learned to dance. I'm a terrible dancer, but I love it, right? And I'm terrible at languages. However, it's very good in hindsight. They say with hindsight, we've always got 20/20 vision, right? We can see clearly because we're looking back. But there's a great saying that says, the hunter who chases 2 rabbits catches neither one. So I also think that it's with sometimes slightly wishful thinking to think we can achieve all, I don't know how many things on your list, 130, to do all of those things. But sometimes for me, I focused in on one, which was the drums, and that probably at the expense of me learning languages. And I don't know, looking back, if I could have done both, because it's, we've only got so much time in the day. And if I'd learned language, maybe I couldn't have played as much football or seen as many of my friends, or something would have turned out different. And yet I still am frustrated with myself for not being able to speak a language. I feel like I'm more than capable of learning one, but I always feel like that moment of when you're most impressionable to learning as a kid at school was probably my prime opportunity, and I let it slip me by. But then it's like, do I want to be worried about that? No, because I did learn all these other things. I just wonder if I had gone for it, maybe I wouldn't have been an accomplished musician. Maybe I'd be a bang average musician and a bang average linguist, and I wouldn't have achieved either of those things. I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, you're very good at focusing, and the acronym I like for focus is follow one course until success. It's something I'm not as good at, I think, where I spread myself too thinly. But I think, I sometimes think, my parents put me on piano and violin and trumpet. In a way, I wish I'd just done guitar and piano, or just guitar or something like that, where I just focused at that point. Because when you do it, it's like the Oprah Winfrey quote, which I like, which says, "You can have anything in life you want, you just can't have everything."
Yeah.
And that's the idea of, if you're going for everything, you get nothing. The two rabbits, you get none. And so, yeah, focus on what you want. But also, what I would say with learning, whether it's the music or the languages, is that, and going back to your question there, you have to have a strong enough why. If there's no reason to learn the language, now, for example, for me, when I went out to Colombia, it's a real struggle if you don't speak Spanish.
Sure.
Forget it.
Sure.
Forget it, because you're going to be totally buggered. Now, I did 5 lessons of Spanish 25 years ago when I was in Guatemala. I lived with a Guatemalan family for a week and did one-on-one lessons with a young girl there for about 5 days. And that was enough Spanish, and I remembered enough. And I've got like Greek and a bit of German and French that I did at A-level and GCSE. So I'm comfortable enough, and Spanish is reasonably straightforward. But there was an incentive to learn it. Now I've got a bigger incentive, because I don't think I had enough Spanish to get around, but not enough Spanish to really have decent conversations with people and without using Google Translate. So I have got more motivation. So if I ever go back to South America, I'm definitely going to brush up on the Spanish, because I've got that big enough why. But when I was trying to brush up on my Spanish, say 10, 15 years ago, when I worked at Sainsbury's and they had someone come in, I barely learned much, because there was no immediate need for it. So you have to have that strong enough why. But you can learn at any age as well. I mean, that's the other thing, and that's one of the other questions one of the other statements I think I've got there. I can't remember where it is now, but it's something about the more you learn, the more you earn, or just be a lifelong learner, that sort of stuff. I think there's that quote from someone which says, "He who stops learning." And whether is old, whether they stop learning at 20 or 60 or something like that. So I think it's about.
Didn't the Buddha also say that enlightenment is when a man no longer has any questions? I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. I might have got that slightly wrong. I'm not sure it's something along those lines. Although, though, I would agree on the learning thing. I think if I was to sum up advice, thinking out loud, because which I think would do younger, I'd do more travel all over, get as many experiences you can possibly get under your belt, whether not just through travel, but through reading, through music, through sound, through all the senses, really, through taste. If you think about the theory of mindfulness, really utilize the 5 senses to their maximum capacity, and say, I love the book. Or it was the guy that never said no to anything, didn't he? He said yes, the yes man, whatever it is. He just said yes to everything
that
for a
film.
year. Yeah, and it's
no, is it?
It was the guy that did it. It was made into a film. I read the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. The guy, I think was it Tim Jolly? If I made that up? No, it wasn't Tim Jolly. I tell you what, I know. I can picture the guy, Dan. I think his name's Dan. I'll think of it in a minute, because I can picture the guy in front of me. Yeah, he did it for a year. Then he made it into a film. And I like the idea of just being open-minded and just saying yes to opportunity. Danny Wallace. Yeah, that sounds right. And just saying yes to opportunity and just seeing where it takes you. Because I think it's very easy to say no. It's very easy to close our minds and make them really narrow in terms of how we see the world. And I think the other thing that I would bear in mind, which I try and do every day, and I try and remind my kids of this, as one of the things I want to teach them, is don't judge or react to other people's standards or values. Always stick to how you would. So, birthday card. Leo might say, well, my friend didn't give me anything in for my birthday, so I'm not going to give anything back. No, it's the wrong way around. Don't worry about it. You don't know their circumstance. If you would always give £5 to all of your friends, and that's what you've set for yourself, and that's what you believe is right, you should still give £5 to the friend that doesn't give 5 back to you, because that's your value, that's your belief, that's your moral compass in the way that you do things, and you shouldn't let someone else's actions change that. I think I've talked about a parable, which is probably the first episode we ever did, which was saving a snake, where a monk sees a snake that's burning in a fire in a burning bush, and he reaches in and grabs the snake. As he does so, the snake bites him repeatedly, and he takes the snake out. And the students that are with the monk say, "Why didn't you let go of the snake? It's been biting you. It's been biting you." And he says, But that's the nature of the snake. The nature of the snake is to
Mm.
bite. That doesn't change my
Mm.
nature, which is to save the snake. And I think that's really powerful. I think so often we change the way that we react or the way that we do things based on other people's behaviors or other people's things. And I think if we always stay true to ourselves, which I know is easier said than done sometimes, I think
Yeah.
we're much better for it.
I mean, this is, well, I think it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my best mates like 10, 12 years ago when I might have mentioned it before, where he was asking me, he'd just suffered a heart attack a couple of months earlier, 30, I think we were 33, 30 something at the time. And we were going out for dinner and he was going to ask me for advice on what to eat at the restaurant or something like that. And I actually did give him, I said, I'd probably eat this, this or that. And then he went and did something completely different. But anyway, he was, at that point, I think I changed my diet probably about only a few months in. Maybe I was only about maybe like 6 months in or a year in. And he asked me if it was like, challenging. Because obviously when you change your diet, you don't realize this until you do change your diet, that it's a lot harder to have social gatherings with people for various reasons. But one of the things I said to him, which echoes what you just said, and I said to him, look, at the end of the day, you have to decide, do you want to live life by your standards or by other people's? Because other people's standards are always going to be changing, and like it's about living up to your expectations, your standards. So if that is my standard for living or giving gifts or whatever, then that's what I follow. I don't compare that then to other people, and it is a lot harder said than done. And I know that it's cost me, for example, in certain ways, but at that point and at this point, I'm choosing to be me, right? Not, and again, it goes back to like not being what all the masses do and everything else. So I think that's really important to be your own person. I think I see that a lot in young people. They're not, and you want to fit in. You don't want to stand out a lot of the time. That's
And you really, I would say now, I mean, you're very good at that, right? You are your own person very much so, Harry. And I think that that serves you really well. I've got your list up in front of me now. I'm having a quick scroll through. I'll tell you something that stood out to me on this, which is quite interesting. Now I've got it in front of me. I can sort of scroll. There are a lot of things on here. Is the Dale Carnegie element to it, which is if you want to be in love, don't be. Whatever you would, I've lost it now. Something like you can either be right or in love.
Oh yeah, that's actually that was mine, not from Dale Carnegie, I don't think.
But it's on the same lines of what he talks about, isn't it? You can try and be right, but you end up just ostracizing yourself and everyone else.
Exactly.
So you can be in love, and I think that's quite a nice thing.
That's my main relationship advice to people, and it's one that I had to myself, and I think I've shared this story before with the whole chopping an onion thing, and that's when it jumped into my head, where I have a way that is going to be more efficient at chopping the onion than say my partner at the time. But I jumped into my head that phrase, and I was like, hang on a second, what's the bigger picture here? Is it really to just get her to improve how she chops an onion and then lead to a little tiff, which I knew was going to happen because I'd probably mentioned it before or whatever? Or is it just about keeping a happy wife, happy life, as they say?
I think you mentioned the word comparison, and it was talking before. One of the really big lessons is and again, it's pretty profound. It's out there, but we don't always live it, which is comparison is a thief of joy. Certainly for the kids. I mean, we're talking about the social pressures that they go through, but they live in a world of comparison. And I think it's so difficult. If you get yourself into that mode, you're living an external life, not an internal one. You're focusing all your attentions on the wrong things. And I just think that's such a dangerous road to take. And I think a lot of people do take it, but the quicker you can step off it, the better, really. Because it doesn't help.
I'm updating the post with that. I like that as well. I don't think that's on there. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's important.
I haven't got through them all. I have found your Learn to Dance at number 98. I feel like we're going through the top 100 countdown and top of the pops here. It's quite good.
Well, you've mentioned something else. Number 121. Life is about experiences, and for you it's stories, but same. And then I said loving and serving others, because that's also something that I think is the meaning of life is just to love and serve others and have. Well,
I love 132, which is
yes, I say this all the time to my students, especially before they get up and speak, because I say so. The phrase in life: "Do what's easy, your life will be hard. Do what is hard, your life will be easy." Because it is easy not to get up and speak. It is easy to sit on the couch and order takeaway and watch Netflix. But then your life is much harder later because you end up with diabetes or heart disease or whatever else. So it's really, I heard that somewhere and I thought, I like that. I'm going to keep that.
Yeah, it got some nice things in here. You know, it's well, of course,
hang around people that inspire, support, and challenge you. What we're doing today, hopefully, 127 as we.
I tell you what, I like 82. Slightly different. So you've got to ignore the naysayers, but it links. It reminds me of sticks and stones will break my bones, but it's never hurt me. I think I've talked about in the past something that I said to my kids is like, when someone gives you a gift, if I give you a gift and you refuse to take that gift from me, who does that gift belong to? If you refuse to accept it, I own that gift. And I think the same is true with the naysayers and with those that insult you or those that say they don't believe in you or say something unkind. It's only true if you accept the gift. So if someone in the playground says to my son, I think you're this, that, and the other, just reject it. Reject the gift, reject the insult. And you never own it. It's only when you accept the gift of the insult that it hits you, it hits home. And I like the visual of, it's like giving that present back to them. And if you don't have it, who is that insult? If you don't accept it, where does it sit? It sits with the person that tried to give the gift and it wasn't accepted. It stays with the person that gave it away. So we'll try to give it away. So I think that's important, because we're sometimes, I don't know why it is, as humans, we seem to accept sometimes the opinions of people that just don't matter. They have no bearing in our lives whatsoever, but the fleeting comment or a fleeting thing that they say can have such weight, such profound impact on us that it can change whole lives. It's such a shame.
Well, that's what I'm about to say, is that sometimes in when I go more into a therapy style of coaching session with people, and you know, you get to the root issue is when they were 7 years old, so-and-so said, I don't know, you've got a horrible singing voice, you should never sing, right? And they've never sung again. And actually they sing beautifully well. Yeah. But it's like, hang on a second, you're allowing a 7-year-old boy to tell. Now, if at like 35 years old or however old you are, you're walking and a 7-year-old comes up to you and says something like that, are you really going to pay much attention? So why are you holding on to that 7-year-old boy 35 years later? And we do. But when you look at it that way and you're thinking, hang on a second, today, if a 7-year-old came up to me and said, you're an idiot for this, are you really going to pay attention to them? Probably not. So
I also think that now. It comes full circle. Now, I might be challenged on this. So this is certainly my view, but I believe this to be true, right? So when you're at school and you sing and everyone tells you sound terrible, and using the example you've given, so you stop singing, right? Now, whether you are terrible in inverted commas or not doesn't really matter. Same with the dancing piece. Someone tells you can't dance when you're a kid, so you stop dancing. Unless you think you're perfect and you can do it. The thing is, when you get older, certainly for what I would find attractive in someone, I would find it relatively attractive to watch someone on the dance floor or sing or whatever to their heart's content, knowing that they just didn't care and they did it anyway for the pure joy of the act. I would find that more attractive personally, having that aura of invincibility of going, you know what? I'm just happy. I'm going to dance. And I'm not a best dancer, but I'm in the flow. I'm in my state of flow. I would find that probably more attractive than the person that's had 12 years worth of lessons and has it dialed down, but has that rigidity or that. I don't know. For me, there's something in that freedom of expression, the aura that comes with the energy.
I agree with that. Attractive. I agree with the freedom to be yourself and be free, whether it's whatever it is you're doing. The only thing I would say, and I would love to agree with you on this.
You've just seen some very attractive, sexy Cuban dancers, right? And you're thinking, when they know their trade, they're very attractive.
No, not that actually. But when I was at this party in Estonia, and there's a really attractive woman who I feel like, well, there wasn't really a connection, but in my imagination, I felt like there was a connection. But she came over to the dance floor, and it was really bad. And I was like, actually, suddenly, I'm not as attracted to you. Now, that sounds really bad to say. And I was shocked at myself because I was like, that's never, ever happened before, where I'm like, because, not every, like, dancing is not really important to me as a thing for attractiveness or not. But I was shocked. I was like, because she's got this composed aura about her, and she's like a spiritual healer and all this and the other. And it's Mind Valley. Everyone is pretty cool at most things. And it just felt jarring. It was like, that was what it was. It was jarring rather than unattractive.
I think that's all right, because you're probably not you're probably not her person, right? But there'll be for someone else.
No, that's true.
For someone else,
but otherwise I would agree with you. Like, if someone is free and they're open and they don't care, and that's the other thing. It's like not to, I think what's the phrase is that, when you're younger, you're always thinking about, what other people think of you. Then when you're a bit older, you don't really care what other people think of you. Then when you're older still, you realize no one was thinking about you in the first place. And they're all too busy thinking about themselves. And I think that's the thing that I do my best to remember, is that, I don't know. Also, I don't know, I find it challenging because sometimes I think to myself, well, this is also temporary, and will any of it matter in the future? And this sounds really bad to say. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking, in 100 years' time, 1,000 years' time, is anyone going to really remember what you did? Like, if you think back through history and name 10 famous people, whether it's Socrates or Einstein or someone, there are billions of other people that we have got no idea about. And even with these people like Einstein and Socrates, we know very little, right? Like, as an individual, right? Scholars might know a lot more, but as an individual, we know so little. And some of me thinks, well, what's the point of doing anything really? Because we're all going to end up in the same place probably, and we're not taking anything with us. And I know that sounds bad, but also at the same time, that also creates almost like a stress management tactic for me. So sometimes when I was at work, I was always thinking, what's the big deal with this, right? And maybe that's a bad thing on my sense, because it didn't drive me to greater things within the workplace. But I always thought, well, does any of this really matter? And I think, recent spiritual experiences just compound that even more, because you're like, there's something beyond all of this. At least I believe so. And where none of this really matters.
I don't think it's good, bad, or indifferent. It just is.
It is. It is what it is. But I do think about that, because sometimes I feel like that can hold me back in terms of what I want to do in this reality, because I just think...
I know we've talked in the past about the 5 regrets of the dying, and one of those, I wish I hadn't worked so hard, is one of those.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen more, my friends more. I wish I hadn't focused all my attention on trying to save money and not on experiences and all these different things. It's very easy to fall into those traps. I thought interesting you were talking about the dancing again. It reminded me of, I liken it because it's getting my wheels turning with the parables and little things I can use with my kids, which I do use. But I don't know if I've used this one or not before, but there's a centipede who has 100 legs and he's walking along. Absolute harmony. All the legs are moving together. It's a beautiful sight. And a little rabbit comes over, or whatever it is, we'll call it a rabbit, hops over and says, "Oh, Mr. Centipede, how do you manage to walk so gracefully? How do you manage to synchronize all those 100 legs so beautifully? It's amazing." And the centipede stopped and agreed. And he said, "Absolutely right. I've never thought about this before. I agree. It's an amazing feat." And as he went to walk on, tripped over and fell over and was never able to walk like that again. As in, for him, it was the moral of the story, if you haven't picked it up, is that sometimes it's when we start thinking about things too much that we lose the sense of who we really are. And before it was beautiful, and now suddenly someone else has seen our beauty, whether it's our terrible singing voice or terrible dancing, whatever, and it stops us being so beautiful. And I think that, and be able to move so graciously. I think that's quite an interesting way as well. It's like, it goes back to, we've done a few podcasts on this, on the pressures of social media now, and the pressure to be perfect, right back to full circle at the start of this show, the pressure to conform, the pressure to know what we want to do, the pressure to know what profession we want to have, and what we have to do to achieve it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some focus, as someone who is always like seeing himself as like uber focused, but it's got to have a little bit of freedom as well to go, you know what, let's just see where the music takes us and enjoy the ride and go travel and read and speak to people.
Yeah, that's it.
Open up our minds.
Enjoy it. And that's like, actually, I'm just looking at number 31 here. And it reminds me of a joke. So number 31 is, women are complex, not to be understood by men, but keep on trying, you might get somewhere. So
women are from Venus and men are from Mars, or the other way around? I always forget. I guess
men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or something like that. But it reminds me of a joke. Have I told you this joke before? I can't remember if I have. So apologies if I have. And I told someone it in the summer, and they didn't laugh and they didn't get it. So I'm not sure how funny it is. Okay, but I've told you about the genie, haven't I? The genie in San Francisco.
I don't know if you have or not.
Okay, so a man's walking along the road in San Francisco, and he stumbles across this lamp, and he rubs it, and out pops this genie. And this genie says to him, "Thank you so much for freeing me. I've been in there for 10,000 years. I'm going to grant you one wish." And the man says to him, one wish. I thought it was 3 wishes you get. And he goes, no, you get 1 wish. So the guy says, all right, well, I've got a lot of family that live in Hawaii and stuff, and it'd be really great if you could build a bridge that goes all the way from San Francisco to Hawaii, so I don't have to get a flight, I can just drive there. And the genie says to him, that is ridiculous, so impossible. That's an impossible task. Just ask me for another wish. Ask me for another wish. So then the man says, okay, well, I would like to understand women. So then the genie says, and he's kind of in and R, and he's going,
I'll build you the bridge.
So about that bridge.
Yeah. So I haven't told you.
I haven't told you it, or
no, I don't think so. No, if you do,
okay.
I don't report.
And so that's So I've given up trying to understand women. I grew up
one of the bigger jokes. It reminds me of something someone said to me when we got married, and I don't know why it's still true, but it's made me laugh. As someone who's been married now for nearly 17 years, I think I'm allowed to say it. I said, bear in mind that when you get married, there are 2 things that will happen. The woman that you marry will think that you will change, whereas the man will think the woman will stay the same. Neither of those things are true. So if you can realize that, you're going to be absolutely fine. Like that's the thing, right?
That's the thing. Women get into relationships with men often to try and change them, and men always get into the relationship hoping they don't change. But that's another road that we're different, right? And everything. So, and the other one, 32, when a woman tells a man her problem, often she doesn't want the man to solve it. So stop jumping to solutions. Just hold the space for her. You know, we are solution prone as men a lot of the time. And
I like 39. We're talking a lot about this. Dance like no one's watching. I like that.
Well, there you go.
That's like my just dance point, right? Dance like no one's watching. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
You got it in there.
Okay, good. Yeah, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I often say that to people. Drink lots of water each day. There you go, Nick. That's for you.
Give 10% away to charity. That's the one thing I think people discover as they go through the wealth journey or career journey is, more wealth they accumulate. At the end of it, you get loads and loads of millionaires or even billionaires that become more philanthropic, and that's because they realise that they get a lot more from giving to others than they do profiteering from others. So I think that's an important one. 20 seconds of bravery about a zoo. Love that. I live my life with that. As you know, I speak about that one a lot. If anyone hasn't seen About a Zoo, you need to see it just for that bit of insight, nothing else.
We talk about that a lot.
So I'm scrolling through these now. Learn a martial art. I've learned several, all badly. I never stuck with any of them, but I did enjoy it.
No, but it's good to do it just for a bit.
A broken heart heals. That's a good one to have. I like that.
Yeah. Tend to regret things you haven't done rather than things you have done. The other one I'm thinking about today specifically is it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission, as I've done a bit of a job of clearing out some things in the house while my mum is away. But they were all marked for charity anyway. But the thing is, by the time or they were marked as potentially to be gifted or presents, but I was like, you know what? We're not going to hold on to things for ages for the odd chance there's a birthday somewhere where someone wants a shirt and tie. I'm giving it to a charity. So I think she may listen to this, but if she does, sorry, I'm going to be asking for a lot of forgiveness coming up as things start to disappear from the house.
Well, I like number 48. I think that's the last one I'm going to mention today. We've got conscious of our time, but hug daily. That's the one thing I miss more since losing my dad than anything else. He was amazing at hugs. It's one, our family is quite like that. We're huggers in our family. We're all quite close, and I miss his hugs every day. And I know that my siblings and my mum will be thinking the same thing. It's the one thing that we miss a lot. And hug daily. It's place. I know
it's something I don't do. I'll be honest, because I don't tend to have that around me. But that's why it's good when you've got like young kids around. Like when my niece is around, hug whenever I can. Yeah, hug daily, very important. Physical touch, so important.
I mean, it's pretty hard to disagree with any of your 100 and odd you got on this, 130 odd. They're all pretty good, but I it's nice. It's nice to have this list. Maybe I'll put it in our show notes. People can follow along and see if they want to add to it or if there's anything we've missed.
Definitely.
Yeah, very nice. Good conversation, Harry. I like that. Took me to some interesting places today. A little bit of a disagreement, which we like, and a few little parables I haven't thought about for some time, and makes you reflect. Reflection's really important. I think maybe that should be on there. We should always reflect.
But
it's been fun. Well, hopefully
Good,
our
good.
listeners have enjoyed the journey with us. But yeah, if you've got anything that we think we haven't discussed, either check out Harry's list and add to it, or send them in to us, and we'll read them out next.
I did post onto my Facebook page, and I said people comment below with any additional tidbits, so you can always find that there and send it to me. So do that.
Very good. Right. Well, I'm not sure if we're meeting up next week. Well, to say, hopefully it might be a couple of weeks. I'll see you next time. I'm not too sure.
Well, good luck with the trip.
Yeah, let's have a good week. And thanks, listeners, for checking in. Remember to give us a review if you haven't. Share it with all of your friends if you think the content may be useful or helpful or insightful. And we'll look forward to catching up again very soon.
Absolutely. Better still, think of 1 or 2 friends that in your head right now that you can share this with, and do that straight away.
And if you can't share with them, just give them a call anyway. When was the last time you called these people? Come on, go call them, get in touch. All right, buddy.
Perfect. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.